Yeah, I mean, I think we as a people are a holistic people, and I think we got to remember that. We don't want to. I don't. My daughter, she's 5, going on 6. She has a firearm. She has gas masks. She shoots. She also colors. She also deals with conflict resolution. We also sit down and we deal with this, as a father should. My point in saying that is, it is not a one-way approach. But when we're talking about last minute, a firearm is to defend life. Annually, that CDC data that the pastor brought up, there's 500,000 to 3 million defensive gun usages annually. That's a big jump, but anywhere between 500,000 to 3 million times a year, someone uses a firearm, most of them non-lethal, to deter someone from attacking someone else. So when we're talking about the extreme end of someone, student or not, right, coming into where our children are, obviously we want all of our staff to have all of the means to prevent that before it gets to that point. But at the same time, when it gets to that point, I don't want our people to not have the means to deal with that threat. Now, I also want them to have the healing, counseling, and dealing with that trauma if it ever came to that after or prior, post the shooting as well. So this is a whole, just like Marcel said, this is a holistic approach. It isn't, one or the other in that view.
It is not one or the other in an ideal political context. But the history of Black people's experience in this country is that we never get funding for healing. We never get funding for non-lethal interventions in the worst conditions of Black people's lives. We always get funding that usually gets taken away from the education, the healing, the rehabilitation of our community members. And so right now with federal funding, literally being stripped away from many of our federal, state, and local funding being stripped away from schools, right? The idea that we would spend our tax dollars to train teachers who are supposed to teach our children, to train them not to be better teachers, not to deal with the inherent anti-Black racism and bias that many teachers, white teachers in particular, have towards our children. We're going to train these very same teachers to use a firearm in an active shooting environment that may sometimes involve Black children. To me, that feels like we are asking teachers to do what police have not been able to do themselves.
That's a feeling, but that feeling isn't backed up by the fact. The fact of the matter is that, again, the organization
it is not a feeling. It is not a feeling.
The organization that I named is a nonprofit. You're not thinking out of the box, Pastor. You got to think a little bit more out of that box. We don't have to. Our organization, Black Guns Matter, has armed more African Americans in the last 4 years than any other time in world history. We do not take any federal funding. We are a nonprofit, and we do all of it voluntary, same as these other organizations that I named.
I was responding to the question about should federal dollars be used to train teachers. I rock with Black Guns Matter folk. I'm okay with Black gun ownership. I am against a profession, whether it's teachers or police, being armed to the teeth under the presumption that they're going to provide safety to our community.
So why call the police then? So why call the police?
I would rather not call the police for anything. I would rather us have our own security.
So if a mass shooter shows up.
Let me say this though, bro. Like, mass shooters in the mind of the public is very different than the kind of mass shooting events that happen in our schools with Black and brown family members. In the gun prevention space, a mass shooting is described as 6 or more people injured, right?
4 or more that are unrelated.
All right, that kind of shooting, at least in the cities that I work in, Oakland, New York, Chicago, those kind of shootings are not about some weirdo or blah, blah, blah. These are individuals in our communities who have conflicts outside the school, on the way to school. And so to me, the work we should be doing is intervening with the small number of individuals that we likely already know and ensuring that they do not continue to use lethal firearms to resolve conflicts. That is the work. We're
agreeing there. We're agreeing there on that. Again, like the brother said, it's a holistic approach to the scenario. We agree in there. But when you're talking about brass tacks, when you get to someone, for whatever reason, comes into a school for whatever their outside reason is, or whether they community or outside of the community, member of the school, ex-member of the school or not, I want the staff to have the means. If we've got broken down to the point where this person, where we haven't made them feel whole, where we haven't addressed some of those serious issues, we've had a failure. This person is now there to attempt to shoot people. I don't want to deal with that person like a social worker. I want to protect life. I want teachers to not, like Marcel said, I don't want them to have to use their bodies as shields to defend their life. I want them to have the means to stop that threat. We're talking about data. Over 90% of shooters in those scenarios, whether you want to call them mass or not, because they conveniently don't call none of the violence in inner city, they don't call that mass shooting. So I get your point, Pastor. What I'm saying is, in those spaces where those shooters are met with armed resistance, they either do one of two things. One, surrender, or two, stop themselves with that same firearm. My issue is when it gets to that point, I do not want our people that care for our children to not have the means, and the most effective means is a firearm to stop that threat. Then we can address it as well as make sure it doesn't happen again. Absolutely. But in that moment, social work ain't going to help.